Picture this, your prospect has just landed on your landing page, your website, or just opened your presentation. That's great, but now comes the hard part. Now we have only 7 to 15 seconds or even less to convince them to stay and keep reading. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about how you can turn your product descriptions into prospect magnets and help you drive more conversions across the board, whether to you conversions means more signups, more downloads, more upgrades, or even more sales. All right, so let's dive right in. So to begin, here's the thing. As marketers, we're really excited about our products and we know all the wonderful benefits that our products can give its potential users. But there's a big problem. We sometimes default into thinking that product descriptions are meant to be purely informative. And we sometimes default into thinking that our prospects are solution aware or even most aware and not just pain or problem aware. And that results in product descriptions that look a little something like this. As you can see in our example, it's packed with a ton of information to help a prospect decide if it's worthwhile for them. But let me ask you this. What kind of impression do you feel that this product description gives about the product itself? Unfortunately, it's difficult to read. It's heavy on the features and it doesn't describe any of the end benefits for the prospect or the end user, giving us, unfortunately, the impression that the app, the product, and maybe even the company behind it might just be as difficult or hard. Now take a look at this app description. It's for the same type of product, the exact same type of product, a learning app, but the differences are enormous. Sentences here are relatively short. They're spaced out, they're clear, and they're easy to read. And there's a huge focus on benefits for the end user. Compared to the first description, this one feels light, easy, and even fun, making us feel that the product will end up echoing these same sentiments. So how can we make sure that our product descriptions, whether we're describing our product on a website, on a one-pager, in a corporate presentation, or in an app description, give off the same kinds of positive impressions as in our Sandcat example? It's actually really quite simple. Yay! Having studied thousands of product descriptions over the years, I've whittled down the best practices into 6 main elements. Now, these elements work for several reasons. One of them being that they help us close the value gap, that gap between what we want to say about our product and what our prospects will experience with our product. They also help to build trust, reduce perceived risks and any barriers to conversions, and they help your prospect visualize those wonderful aha moments with your product before they even come to experience them. Now, you might not be able to use all 6 elements depending on the format of your description, your audience's stage of awareness, and the data that you have at hand. And nor should you always use them in this exact order. But on a macro level, these 6 elements are the most important points you need to cover in your description. And by covering them all, I can almost guarantee you'll have a product description that is not just informative, but is wonderfully persuasive, and that drives conversions. All right, so let's do this. All right, our first element is a compelling headline and subhead. So picture this, your prospect has just landed on your landing page, your website, or just opened your presentation. That's great, but now comes the hard part. Now we have only 7 to 15 seconds or even less to convince them to stay and keep reading. This isn't easy. There's Facebook pings, email notifications, WhatsApp messages, and phone calls interrupting our prospects all the time. But there are a few ways we can break through the noise to grab their attention fast and hold it. So when you come to write your heading, here are a few ways you can write a compelling one. You can make your headline your USP, your unique selling point, highlighting for prospects immediately why you're different, why you're better than competitors. And this is something that works really well with solution-aware and most-aware audiences. Another way to do it is by solving your prospect's biggest pain or problem. So if you know your prospect is likely to be pain or problem aware, call it out. Show them that they're in the right place by solving that problem for them. 2 more tips are to weave in power words whenever possible. Now, power words are words such as you, now, free, and because, and they've been used for centuries to catch readers' attention, and they still work today. And another way to write your headline is to use future pacing. This helps keep your prospect focused on the end result, on their end goals, what they want to achieve with your product. And this can be a very powerful driver. Now, when we come to write the subhead, the subheading, I would not recommend using your company tagline, because your tagline is 99% of the time about your company, and here we want to focus on your prospect. As your prospect is reading your product description, they're asking themselves, what's in it for me? They're not necessarily thinking about your product, but about what your product can do for them and how it can help them achieve their goals. So in the subheading, it's a good idea to use social proof. Basecamp, for example, does this really well with testimonials and real numbers, and as does ClickFunnels and SEMrush. Alternatively, you can work in authority if you have high-profile clients. For example, a subhead for a SaaS company that reads, loved by teams at Google, Microsoft, and Shopify, you're going to want to learn a lot more about them simply because of these clients' authority. So here are just a few examples, a few places where you can find some great headings and subheadings. Okay, now that we have our prospect's attention, we need to hold it and deepen that initial connection by describing who's going to benefit the most from using your product. This does several things. First of all, it causes your prospects to self-identify with your target audience, and it helps them qualify themselves. It also works in the reverse, in the sense that if your prospect's goal is to be in your target audience, whether that's by profession, income level, or any other factor, then they will also be attracted to your product because you are showing how it aligns with their goals. Many product descriptions, unfortunately, skip this part and kind of launch immediately into describing their product's features. But I find this step really sets the stage for your prospects to visualize themselves using your product and achieving positive outcomes with it. All right, so how to do this? So as a continuation of your subheading, or in the first couple of sentences of your description, you can simply call out your primary audience, the 20 to 30% of your audience who are the perfect fit for your product. But if you have multiple audience segments, you can call them all out. Hotjar does a really good example, a really good job of this in their creative, in the hero section of their homepage. But Lead Pages and Fiverr also do this really well. Another way, of course, to do this is to highlight the #1 benefit that your primary audience will get out of using your product. So this is a little more subtle. It means you're still calling out your primary audience, just in an indirect manner. So again, as I mentioned previously, here are some places where you can find some great examples of cementing the connection. Right now, our third element, number 3, is linking features to benefits. This is what I find to be the most underestimated part of any product description, but it's very easy to do it well. And that's because many product descriptions just default into listing their features one after the other, which, all right, it's fine if your audience is solution aware, most aware, or most aware with high intent. But to help widen the top of your funnel and attract the attention of those who might be further back in their marketing stages of awareness, you need to connect these tangible end user benefits to your product's features. And just as a reminder, benefits can be emotional and social too, not just functional. All right, so how to do this? First, I recommend that you use bullets and numbered lists to help space out your sentences and make all this information easier to read, because this section is usually the most text-heavy part of any product description. Now, there are 2 main ways to write your bullets, or fascinations as they're also called, and that's by writing the feature first, then the benefit, or the benefit followed by the feature. Here are a couple of places where you can see some good examples of feature benefit and benefit feature statements, but I'll give you just a brief example from ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels says, create sales funnels that convert your visitors into leads and then into customers. So sales funnels here is the feature, but the benefit is that they convert into leads and customers. An example of a benefit feature statement from Kajabi is eliminate friction in the checkout process with our proven multi-step checkout pages. So this is immediately connecting a feature, the checkout pages, with the benefit, eliminating friction. App descriptions as well are a great place to look for examples of these feature benefit and benefit feature statements, but you can Google these examples for more. All right, so the next element of fail-proof product descriptions is simplicity. In Unbounce's conversion benchmark report, it was found that conversions were higher for 6 out of 10 industries when their copy was written at a 9th grade reading level or lower. So unless your audience is super sophisticated and intellectual, it's best to go make your copy as easy to read as possible. The easier your copy is to read, the easier it is to digest, and the easier it is to get those important messages across. So this involves keeping sentences short, succinct, and clear. I recommend checking your copy through with a readability app. Grammarly is great, Readability excellent, Hemingway app is also good. All of these are basically excellent in helping you clarify your sentences and cutting out unnecessary fluff. And my favorite tip as well is actually to let your copy rest. Once you've finished writing it, leave it for an hour, 2 hours, or maybe even a day if you can before editing it. You'll be surprised at how the same words will look very different once you've had a break from looking at them. All right, so now we're getting into element number 5, and this is all about preempting and diffusing any objections. So this is really about focusing on getting rid of any potential sources of friction that could stop your prospect from signing up, downloading, or buying from you right now. This is my personal favorite tip because it really hits home with your prospect. And it's almost like reading their minds, because by answering the questions and objections that they're thinking about while reading your description, it means they don't need to go anywhere else to find those answers, meaning they stay engaged, they stay on the page, they stay focused, and there'll be fewer barriers to conversion. Right, so there are a few ways to do this in your description. The first is to find out what their objections are. You can do this by reviewing data collected from customer surveys, testimonials, and reviews from both existing and previous customers. Check with your marketing team, with marketing teams, with customer service, with sales, and try and get as much information about what their common objections are. And then use them to answer them in your description. So if your product though is new or is more similar to a competitor in the market, you can also do a SWOT analysis or competitor audit to dig down deep and find what those barriers are. Now to implement this, I would recommend doing so in the bullet feature section of your product description, or even devoting a separate or mini FAQ, frequently asked questions section, if space allows it. Here is also a good place to include further examples of social proof or authority to help back up, to help verify to the audience that what you're saying is actually true. And last but not least is the call to action. Now, this is really important because while it might seem obvious to include it in a website or a landing page, many don't think to include it in the app description, in their corporate presentations, their one pages, or even their LinkedIn company profiles. And you most certainly can, and you should. If you don't, it's like walking out of a movie just before it reaches the climax. At this point, your prospect has read all the way through your description, and they've weighed up your product. In their own mind, they've weighed up your product against competitors. So tell them what their next step is instead of just letting them guess at it. And the reason is for that is what might seem obvious to us is not always obvious for the prospect. So a good call to action will involve restating your biggest benefit for your end users. Again, keeping the focus on what your prospect is going to gain from your product, and use action words to help drive that action. So using words like get, download, sign up, and start encourage your prospect to take action, and take action right now. Okay, here are just two places where you can see some great examples of calls to action. All right,